Welcome to the Growing Tall Poppies podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nat Green, and I'm so excited to have you join me as we discuss what it means to navigate your way through post-traumatic growth and not just survive, but to thrive after trauma. Through our podcast, we will explore ways for you to create a life filled with greater purpose, self-awareness, and a deep inner peace. Through integrating the many years of knowledge and professional experience, as well as the wisdom of those who have experienced trauma firsthand, we will combine psychology, accelerated approaches, coaching, and personal experience to assist you to learn, to grow, and to thrive. I hope to empower you to create deeper awareness and understanding and stronger connections with yourself and with others, whilst also paving the way for those who have experienced trauma and adversity to reduce their suffering and become the very best versions of themselves in order to thrive. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Welcome back to Growing Tall Poppies. Thank you so much for continuing to listen in and to be a part of our community. Today I'm going to go a little bit deeper and become a bit more vulnerable and share more of the real story and the impact of systemic harm for me. And I know from all your beautiful messages of support that many of you have also shared similar experiences. So I'm going to delve deeper from where I left off in that episode 63 around my own story. It all started when I saw another professional who I was to see for treatment after my previous disastrous appointment. When I was asked about the previous review, I burst into tears, seemingly out of nowhere. Just came out of the blue, and I thought, oh, that is not okay. This meant I had to actually acknowledge and speak of what had happened. It was raw and confronting. And to be honest, made it feel all the more real. I've been trying my best for such a long time to pretend it hadn't happened or to ignore it and hope it would go away. But we all know how that usually turns out. Without going too deep and revealing too much, let it suffice to say that I was encouraged to speak up, to make a complaint to the relevant association about what had occurred. And I did that in good faith, knowing that I always do that for my clients, offering them a path where they are able to speak up if they're not happy with something that's happened to them. But that actually took me another 12 months to get up the courage to do that. I knew in my heart what had happened, yet I still questioned myself. Second guessed for what purpose it had been done, started to wonder if it had even happened or whether I was overreacting. Yet I knew deep down, and let's be honest, not too deep, that what had happened was not right and certainly not necessary. And I made my decision to proceed with the complaint. And as a health professional, I weighed things up for so long, as I knew the ramifications of making a complaint for a professional and the impact this could have. So I knew I had to be absolutely certain. And I was. I followed due process and did exactly as I was instructed. Whew, little did I know what that would mean. And the cost to me of no longer staying silent. The complaint was made in a system supposed to protect people. I was informed that the person would get a copy of my complaint in full. So that definitely impacted the depth and the detail of what I included. And I gave enough information that I felt should have meant a follow-up email or contact with me to make further inquiries, to listen to my story of what had really happened from my perspective. But sadly, that never happened. And this commenced this systemic crap. The system's token 6 monthly letters telling me very little, and that the person had been brought before them and counselled. The hell did that mean? And that this process is very good for the professionals in providing them guidance and suggestions to improve their practice. Really? Then there were crickets. The silence was deafening. Then ultimately, 2 years down the track, there was another token letter. Again, very dismissive of the entire situation. And I finally broke. I was sick of not being heard. I rang the contact person on the bottom of the letter. And when I asked for further information, I was stonewalled and told I could not be provided with any further information, that it had been investigated and I would have been advised of such in the beginning. This was one of my turning points and a breaking point all in one. I was patronised beyond belief and spoken down to about, "Oh, you still sound upset." To which point it was like a red flag to a bull and I lost it. I recall swearing at the person on the other end of the phone. Not my finest moment, but in line with the reaction which I felt was justified. And I said, "Well, you'd be upset too if you'd been sexually assaulted." To which point I was met with silence. Absolute silence. The silence was deafening. And I sat in my pain again. Complete silence. And then suddenly the person's tone changed. "Oh, perhaps you'd like to submit a formal complaint about this." Oh my God, are you kidding? To which point I responded that this was exactly what I had done. And it had gotten me nowhere. I ended up hanging up. I was so exasperated with a system that I felt was set up to protect. Yet it was also doing significant harm. They hadn't listened. I felt ignored, dismissed. And as a fellow professional, I was devastated by the lack of compassion and transparency with the process from a complaints perspective. And I also know from being on the other side, having seen colleagues over the years go through complaints processes, that they're grueling, they're awful, and they take significant toll on the professional. And that there are, unfortunately, often vexatious complaints that are made which cause significant distress to the practitioner. And these are dreadfully distressing and difficult. But I also knew, however, that I had not made the complaint lightly, and I expected it to be taken seriously. And for this to have been a factor in consideration when reviewing the documents. And this never happened, and it was minimised and dismissed. After my phone call, things did start to progress, thankfully. So whilst it didn't feel like my finest moment, my speaking up did start to get some traction, and further investigations commenced. And thankfully, the overseeing complaints body took over and things began to progress. And they actually began to see it for what it was and what had happened. And I really shouldn't be surprised, but then came the next bureaucratic bungle. Systems set up from a patriarchal system then became involved. And again, the issues were minimised and stonewalled and things stalled again. Then there were excuses and more forms of systemic abuse and more systemic bungles that if I revealed them to you, you would be completely mind blown and feel like it couldn't possibly be true. Yet it is. Then the best one yet happened last year when the very person I had made a complaint about put in a formal complaint about me. And worse still, the body didn't pick this up and registered as a complaint about me. And this goes on my record. And to top it all off, they didn't advise me until afterwards, leaving me no room to even comment. There was no room for recourse. It was just accepted, allowed to proceed without any context. Let that one sink in. This was probably one of the most challenging moments. Again, I felt shattered as a result of having experienced further system abuse and significant harm and suffered significant distress and sat with that for a while. I was so distressed, beside myself. Then the rising anger and sense of injustice raised its head again, as it does for me. It came up within me and I found my voice. I simply couldn't stay silent again as a result of a system that had yet again failed me and undoubtedly failed many, many others. It was time. So I got on that phone again to the head of legal in the complaints body and I spoke up. And she listened and arranged an in-person meeting. So down I went to their head office and we had a meeting where I was able to verbalise all my concerns about the entire process from start to current. And they appeared to listen. They finally left me feeling acknowledged and somewhat validated. And we even spoke about legislative changes that are being recommended to their systems as a result of my case and my story. That finally felt like I could do something positive within this shambles of a system. Then a year went by. More silence and more systemic failures became evident. Again, I reached out to my contact in the system. Again, I was acknowledged. And again, I heard, yes, it's a system where change moves extremely slowly. And my frustration raised its head again. And then I was informed about an outcome that is far less than satisfactory. And there's no further action that can be taken now. And the matter is finished. Now I have two choices. I can continue to place my energy in this direction and be completely zapped of energy and life for a sense of validation and justice that deep down I know will never eventuate, as the system has so much red tape. And even when you are believed, you are placated and patronised and unlikely to make any real inroads. Or I can use my energy in creating processes that may not change the system, but assist others in navigating this path and managing the undoubted distress caused by such systems. So my mission to continue to support the people just like you who have been impacted and damaged by these systems, to help you know that whilst you may not feel heard, you have a choice and you can do the healing regardless I realised that while I had been waiting for the system to fix what had happened, I was giving it power over my healing. So I'm not waiting for an apology that will never come. I'm not replaying conversations, hoping for a different ending. I'm not silencing myself to protect the comfort of those and systems who've harmed me. So I'm choosing option 2. And I'm also choosing to take the matter as high as I can to the state and federal ministers. Whilst I understand there may be little that can change, I am still deeply passionate about advocating for systemic change and feel as though I need to share my story and provide suggestions as to how changes can be made at a systemic level so others are not experiencing what I have. Systemic change doesn't happen unless someone takes a stand and provides suggestions and options for improvements based on professional and lived experiences. So I'm okay to embrace my empowered trailblazer and authentic warrior archetypes and lead the way to create the change I wish to see in the world. Nothing changes if nothing changes and if I remain silent. I'm not expecting that of you. But what I can offer to you is that you stay as part of this community. And I share my framework, my support with you to help you navigate the harm that's been done and to go from a place of merely surviving to thriving again. Thank you so much for listening, for sharing your special, precious time with me, and for allowing me to share my story, and for your beautiful messages of love and support. I thank you again from the bottom of my heart, and I'm so grateful that you're a part of this community. So continue to rise, stand tall, and be the beautiful, tall poppy that you were always destined to be. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Growing Tall Poppies. It is my deepest hope that today's episode may have inspired and empowered you to step fully into your post-traumatic growth so that you can have absolute clarity around who you are, what matters the most to you, and to assist you to release your negative emotions and regulate your nervous system so you can fully thrive. New episodes are published every Tuesday, and I hope you'll continue to join us as we explore both the strategies and the personal qualities required to fully live a life of post-traumatic growth and to thrive. So if it feels aligned to you and really resonates, then I invite you to hit subscribe, and it would mean the world to us if you could share this episode with others who you feel may benefit too. You may also find me on Instagram at Growing Tall Poppies and Facebook, Dr. Natalie Green. Remember, every moment is an opportunity to look for the lessons and to learn and increase your ability to live the life you desire and deserve. So for now, stay connected, stay inspired, stand tall like the tall poppy you are, and keep shining your light brightly in the world. Bye for now.